Hello, my name is Erin Burns. I'm an assistant professor and lead scientist at MSU, and I focus on corn, forages, and potatoes. And today I am bringing the MSU corn research plots to your viewing device. Fortunately, since we can't have you all out to view our herbicide trials this year, we are going to take some pictures and be able to still look at some of those herbicide treatments and discuss some of the symptomology in weed control that we're seeing. So today in this video, we are going to discuss corn herbicide injury from pre-emergence residual herbicide treatments that we put out this past year. As many of you know, cool, wet soils can lead to corn injury from pre-emergence residual herbicides. And this is based off of herbicide selectivity. And herbicide selectivity is based on the crop's ability to rapidly metabolize the herbicide to non-toxic forms. So why do we see this injury during these cool, wet periods? And that's because the corn plants are still able to uptake the herbicide at a rapid rate due to that soil moisture, but they're not able to metabolize or break down the herbicides at a similar pace. So whenever this is off, this rate is tilted in the favor of taking up that herbicide by not being able to detoxify it as quickly, that is when we see that injury. This is a figure of both precipitation and air temperatures at our location in East Lansing. We planted on May 25th, which I have on the figures as a green vertical arrow, and we made the pre-emergence herbicide applications on the same day. And overall, if you look at the upper right, that's the precipitation. We do see we had a few tenths right around the 28th to the 29th, when we would expect that corn was emerging through that soil profile. And then on the right are our air temperatures. So the blue bar are the maximum air temperatures, and the green are the minimum. And we did have, right around planting, we were fairly warm in the 80s and upper 90s, but had lows in the 60s. But then right after that, starting on the 29th, we did see a cooler spell, especially if you look at those minimum air temperatures at the green bar at the bottom. So we did have a pretty decent swing in air temperature during our time of corn emergence. So how did this impact some of our treatments? So we'll go over a few of those. And the first is that you know that corn can exhibit a variety of symptoms after our pre-herbicide applications. The first group of herbicides I'd like to discuss and so show photos of are group 15. So this is the herbicide site of action group number that you can see in our weed control guide. It's also present on many of the herbicide labels, usually at the top of those herbicide labels. And these are long-chain fatty acid inhibitors, which you'll see their damage is very much linked to the name of this site of action group. Examples include metolachlor, which is the active ingredient in the trade name herbicides of dual 2-magnum, cinch, and parallel; acetochlor, which is the active ingredient in harness, break free, and surpass; dimethylamine P, which is the active ingredient in outlook, also a component in Armazon Pro; and then any of these active ingredients in premixtures along with atrazine, which is group 5. So I've listed quite a few of them here: Bicep 2-magnum, Lumax, Lexar, Cinch, Degree Extra, Harness Extra, Full-Time, Keystone, and many, many more. So if you have a copy of our weed control guide, this is what the table looks like at the very front of the corn section. This is just a snapshot from our guide, which looks at the soil-applied herbicides, which have the premixtures on their left, and then this group on site of action numbers. So when we're looking for this type of damage, we're looking for any kind of 5 to 15 combination. So as you can see, I'm circling them right now. There's quite a few premixtures that contain these two herbicide sites of action. These are pictures of corn plants and plots that received herbicide applications from those group 15s or group 15 plus 5s, along with the atrazine premixture that we had in our plots this year. These are 10 days after herbicide application, and you can see we did have some corn injury. So rarely would we see that corn seedlings may fail to emerge from the soil and actually leap out underground as a result of injury from these group 15 herbicides. But more common is what you see in the pictures here. And that's the corn will actually emerge, but it appears very malformed and has twisted leaves that do not unroll properly, which you can see in many of these pictures. So really the hallmark of a lot of these are these arching appearance that you see in a large number of these photos, in which those leaves simply do not unroll properly from the plant. And this is due to abnormal formation of the waxy layer on the leaves, which makes these plants unroll improperly. And this makes sense because these are group 15 herbicides which impact long-chain fatty acid formation, which is a role in that leaf layer. So that's what's really causing some of this herbicide injury symptomology. So there's another 4 set of pictures in which we did see that herbicide injury. These are, once again, from plots that were on campus this year that received a group 15 herbicide or a group 15 plus atrazine application. And once again, it's this arching appearance, this unrolling issue of the leaves that you would see once again with this type of injury. And injury potential increases also on lighter or lower organic matter soils, in addition to these cool, wet periods. Unfortunately, injury is usually short-lived and rarely causes yield reductions. So most of these plants that have been injured as a result of these herbicides will grow out of this injury. So I went back to those same exact plants 14 days after herbicide application and took these photos with a yardstick. And I have a blue horizontal bar at about 3 inches for you to be able to compare the height of some of these plants to give us as a proxy to understand how these plants recovered and potential for long-term implications on yield. The 3 pictures on the left were treated with those herbicides. The far right is our control picture. And overall, you can see that new growing point, that whorl in the center, is about at 3 inches. So these plants recovered quite nicely. Very similar to this set of images. Once again, that blue bar is at about 3 inches, and the control photo is on the far right. And we do see they're all about the same height. So although we did see that injury early on, just a short time later, we do see these plants recover quite nicely. Another group that can cause pre-emergence herbicide injury are group 3s, which are root inhibitors. Most common herbicide is H2O, and it's component in several generics. This type of injury increases with that cool, wet weather, shallow planted corn, and once again on light and lower organic matter soils. Symptoms are pruned roots, swollen root tips, and stunted plants. You can see that root architecture on the left picture. We did not have any of these treatments out on campus this past year. This is the type of injury that you would observe if you did have this type of herbicide in this correct environmental scenario to see that. And emerged plants subsequently will look often purple, which we would link with phosphorus deficiency, and that's due to these roots cannot grow as well, and therefore they cannot absorb those nutrients as well. So that's a secondary side effect that we do see with group 3 herbicide injury. The next group are group 2. These are ALS inhibitors. So the active ingredient thiocarbazone, which is in Corvus, rimsulfuron, which is in Basis Blend and Resolve products, and then flumetzolam, which is in SureStart, Hornet, and Python. Injury once again increases with cool, wet weather, shallow planted corn, and light, low organic matter soils. And we often see this type of injury is observed with abundant rainfall followed by hot weather. So this stimulates herbicide uptake above the corn tolerance level. Symptomology that we observed are stunted both the corn root and shoot growth. The roots may be reduced in lateral growth and development. So if you dug up a plant, you wouldn't see as much lateral root development. The roots may also appear slightly thickened and swollen, and the shoots may appear stunted and purple to yellow, which you see in these photos. We did have herbicide treatments that contained group 2s out this past year on campus. We did not observe any kind of herbicide damage. These are pictures sent in to me this past year from a different location within the state that would have this type of Group 2 herbicide injury. And it's important to note that if good growing conditions occur during the weeks following this type of injury, the corn usually recovers and we see little impacts on yield. Final group I'd like to discuss are Group 27. These are HPPD inhibitors, which we term pigment inhibitors or bleachers, which you'll see is linked pretty nicely to the type of injury that they cause. Herbicides that contain Group 27 active ingredient are Balance Flex and Corvus. These contain isoxaglutol, and then mesotrione containing products like Callisto, which is a component in Acuron, Lumax, Flexar, and very many others. Similar to the other groups, injury increases with cool, wet weather, shallow planted corn, and on lower organic matter, lighter textured soils, and on higher use rates. So some of these you can use at a little bit higher use rate, and in some of those scenarios we do see some injury. Symptoms are chlorotics, a completely bleached white appearance on leaf tissue. So when I term those bleachers, on both of these images you can see that bright white herbicide symptomology. So you'd see these also on the weeds that are there controlling, but then also on some of the corn plants that were injured. So injury usually appears on the older leaves, while the newer leaves are unaffected, which you can definitely see on this picture on the right. We have this bleached tissue, but this newer tissue that is growing is pretty green. And then the bottom left picture is actually a photo from this past year when we were cleaning out one of our nozzles. So this plant received quite a high rate of an HPPD inhibiting herbicide, but I thought it was good to show this fairly hallmark, very bleached white appearance on the leaves that is linked to Group 27 herbicide injury. And potential for mesotrione, so that's the Callisto containing products, injury from soil applied herbicides is usually less than isoxaglutol, so Balance Flex or Corvus. And although symptoms from these herbicides are perhaps the most noticeable than the other herbicide injuries we discussed today, this injury is often short-lived and these plants can grow and continue to grow quite well, and we see little impacts on yield. As a final note, I'd like to discuss herbicide safeners. Herbicide safeners reduce potential for corn injury. They are in many herbicide formulations and that you can purchase today, and they reduce toxicity of herbicides to corn by increasing herbicide detoxification. So they actually give those plants a boost in the enzymes that produce those herbicide detoxification, and that is when we will help those corn plants not exhibit the same type of injury that they would have if that safener was not in that particular herbicide. And some examples of herbicides that contain safeners are Dual 2 Magnum, Cinch, Harness, Breakfree, and Surpass, and many others. I just listed a few here. So this is why we often don't see the herbicide damage when we apply these pre-emergence herbicide products that contain safeners, and are a great addition to many of these herbicides that allow us to use these within corn and not have any type of corn injury. Finally, I'd just like to highlight our shared website, which I share with the other weed scientists at MSU, which is msuweeds.com. We have our weed control guide up there. Also, any of the 2019 research results are posted under there for various trials that are done amongst the weed science team, and then many of our fact sheets and other videos and other great resources. So encourage you to look at our website for further resources, and stay tuned. We recently made our early post herbicide applications, so I'll come back with some pictures to share of those. Thanks for listening today, and hopefully your season is going great.